So I hope you will enjoy some news stories about old bells in Falmouth. For those who don't know, I've been studying bells in town for several years now. I've collected information for more than 30 Falmouth bells. And I don't want my talk to be nothing but pictures of bells. So here they are, all together. That's not all of them, but most of them. But I can't promise that there will not be more pictures of bells to follow. So there are many types of bells in Falmouth. We have church bells, fire bells, school bells, farm bells, fog bells. Before there was fog horns, I used fog bells. Commemorative and decorative bells and others. The bells in Falmouth came from some of the well-known U.S. foundries. Revere is the one that people know mostly. Holbrook, Maneely, Blake, McShane, Hooper, and there are two from a British foundry as well. There were lots more than that little list of foundries in the 18th and 19th century in the U.S., but they're all gone now. There are, I think, two that are still making bells, but they're not the old foundries that were here years ago. So I put all my bells onto some maps and the little red dots here, and I don't expect you to see this, of course, just to give you an idea. They're in different parts of town. I'm happy to talk about this afterwards if you want. And they're included in my book, Bells of Falmouth, if you want to take a closer look. And there are a few copies back there which you can buy. But this is not a book-selling talk. This is just more stories about bells. So my interest in bells initially was to sort of locate and categorize them. But then collecting things like the foundry and the size and the date that they were made and all that sort of thing. But then I got interested in more than just the bells. I always find that the bells themselves or the host building often have stories that need to be told. So I began to put together little stories. And to get the background, I consulted things like the Falmouth Enterprise Online Archives, the town meeting reports that are there. And I got a lot of help from the Falmouth Historical Society, Woods Hole Historical Museum, and the library has a great reference section as well as some online stuff. Donald Fish had a great collection of Falmouth pictures. Some people may know about that. I actually met him a couple of times and bought some pictures from him and heard some of his stories as well. So all of Falmouth bells are a bell, just a single bell. But in the world of bells, a lot of installations have multiple bells. And they're named differently depending on how many there are and how they're hung. So ones that are rung by swinging, so they move, are called peals, and no relation to my name. And this is actually an etching of St. Paul's in London, 1878, I think. So you can see all the bells there, and they turn on the wheel, so they ring when they swing and the clapper hits the bell. The other method of making them ring is to have them fixed, and the clapper is made to move and hit the bell. In that case, the names depend on how many there are. So here's a little group. The bottom there are all fixed. Now, the one on top is different. It rings by being rotated. But the ones on the bottom are rung by being struck. So if it's like that, and there's up to 22 of them, it's called a chime. And if there are more than 22, 23 and more, I don't know why that number was chosen, then it's called a carillon. And we've all heard of carillons. This one is Riverside Church in New York, biggest and best. 74 bells there, I think. Now, chimes and carillons are usually set up to play music, not just to ring and be bells. So there's a musician sitting at a big keyboard with things, so he can actually strike and play music. And they give concerts with quite complex music. It's pretty interesting. Unfortunately, no bells in Falmouth, no buildings in Falmouth are suitable for an installation like this. But there's a modern alternative called an electronic carillon. So this is basically recordings of bells played over good speakers outside. So there are no actual bells, and that saves the requirement for a big, strong building and concern about corrosion and that sort of thing. And if the bell sounds are produced digitally, created from nothing, then you can add little features to make them sound more real. Instead of just a tone, you put in the harmonics and the other sounds that real bells have. So they can be pretty convincing sounds. Now, this is the Woods Hole Church, Woods Hole Methodist Church in the late 50s. Nice bell, but only one bell. But I found a Falmouth Enterprise article from 1959 about an electronic carillon that was being installed in this church and also in the Congregational Church downtown. And there was to be an initial trial of playing music from this electronic carillon every day at 6 p.m. The Falmouth Enterprise reported that in Woods Hole, the church carillon was too vibrant. Now, we usually think of vibrant like vibrant colors, but this is vibrant as in vibrations. But there were no bells, it was just the sound. So. But it was a problem. Another quote from the article, "Music of the bells did not ring as sweetly in Woods Hole as over the village green." So, same sound, different audience. So the trial in Woods Hole was discontinued. But the system, I think, was donated to the Congregational Church by a parishioner. And I guess it was accepted and used, although I don't have any record of it. And it's certainly not there today. I'm checking with the archivist, Janine Jeffrey at the Congregational Church, to see if we can find any mention of it in their records. I think probably we will not, because this electronic carillon, 1959, is kind of an aberration which pales in comparison to the history of Congregational Church and its revered bell. So let you know if we ever find anything about that. And there's another twist to this story, the reason I bring it up. There actually were two Falmouth Enterprise articles. In both cases, they used the phrase, "Music of the Bells, Arlington Carillon Recording." It kind of got my attention, and I started looking around in Arlington, Massachusetts, and found nothing. But eventually I found out, and I'm pretty sure this was referring to the then new Netherlands Carillon, located in Arlington, Virginia. This was a gift from the people of the Netherlands in appreciation for the U.S. participation in the liberation of the Netherlands in 1945. It's a huge freestanding structure on a ridge overlooking the Potomac, views of the mall and the Arlington National Cemetery. It's still there, run by the National Park Service, little known place to go. So the construction of this carillon began in 1958. So the promoter of the proposed installations in Falmouth, George Potter, must have obtained an early recording of it, or maybe he made it himself and set up a way to make a playback, and he tried to sell it to churches. Did okay at the Congo, no sale in Woods Hole. But today there are two electronic carillons in town, much newer than this one, of course. One at St. Anthony's and one at St. Patrick's. So my story of St. Anthony's comes as two drive-by experiences. The first was early in my bell career, about 2016. I was driving by one day and I was stopped by the sound of Westminster quarters being rung. Now, you may not know what that is, but you do know the sound. So I could see the bell and the cupola, but clearly it was not making the sounds that I heard, this Westminster quarter ring. It turns out I was hearing a new electronic carillon, which they had. St. Anthony's been installed in 2015. Came from a company called Verdun, and it's modern electronics and pretty good sound. No relation to the Netherlands carillon. So the speaker's on the roof, and it's not a bad thing. So my second drive-by experience at St. Anthony's was, this is now January 2021, drove by, and I noticed that the cupola was missing. Of course, I stopped, and I found that it was on the ground, and there were some workers there from a company in Massachusetts who were renovating the whole cupola. And they specialize in this kind of work. So they were concerned about the woodwork and the dome. And it took, I visited them several times over the course of about a year to watch the progress. And eventually it was like this, fully renewed and vinyl covered, so it'll last a long time. For some reason, they changed the color of the dome from gold to white, which I think makes it look a little less appealing. But I believe they renewed the cross and the lightning grounding cable going to the top. On one of my visits, there's a picture of a bell here, while the work was still being done, I found the bell stored away for safekeeping. It was actually in a shop. They left the shop door open and I went in. Prior to this, I'd been trying to get information about this bell, and nobody in the business office knew anything about it. The priests sort of come and go. They didn't know its history. So now I at least knew who made it and how big it was. Now, I don't know why it was painted gold. So there's only a minimal description on the bell. Sometimes the inscriptions tell you a lot more about the bell, but this one didn't tell us anything. But the Book of Falmouth, good reference, tells us this. It's referring to this bell. The bell found in Mill Pond was dredged up and placed in the church where it still summons the faithful to worship. Now, it's not being used now. This is Book of Falmouth was 1986, but it was found in Mill Pond. There's a story there. I don't know. I don't know. And one of the reasons it is not rung anymore, it was never mounted properly to be rung. This used to hold it. And this is during the renovations. It was kind of broken. The company working on the cupola were not really bell people, but they said they'd rebuild this to make it strong enough to hold the bell, but it wasn't going to be rung. Inside the church, little diversion here. It's an interesting sanctuary. There's a life-size picture of Our Lady of Fatima. Also in there, there's some crystal chandeliers and stained glass windows depicting occupations of the local community. Beautiful building. St. Patrick's has the other electronic carillon in town, the one I know about. And this little recording I made, which I hope will play, I made at noon hour. So at noon each day, you get the Westminster quarter rings, and then you get the 12 strikes. So I'm not going to play all that for you. And then they do an Angelus, and then they play a hymn tune. So the other part of St. Patrick, my history of St. Patrick has it's a bit sparse, so I'll tell you what I know. The parish website says it was dedicated in 1911. This is the building, not the bell. probably looking about like this. But in the Enterprise archives, I found several references to routine mass happenings way before 1911 at Main Street, St. Patrick's Church. And then we go to the book of Falmouth again, and it says, the church was built on Main Street in 1899. So that kind of fits with my observation of having masses earlier than 1911. I guess one possibility is built in 1899 and dedicated in 1911, but I don't think that's right. So what about a bell? Surely a tower like that deserves a bell. And again, I have a non-definitive answer. Initially, I was told there's no bell. And then another time later on, I was told there was a bell, but it's no longer there. And recently, I've been told by Gary Parsons, who's the property manager for all the Catholic churches, there is a bell, but it's hard to reach. He hasn't actually seen it, but he's seen a picture of it. So it's as close as we can get. But then he tells me also that to get to it, you have to go into the tower from the peak of the roof. So if you look up here, there's a little tiny square box there. Can you see that? Yeah. So you can't get from inside the building. You got to somehow vaporize yourself on top of the building, probably a bucket truck or something, and then go in and then go up. So maybe the next time they have steeplejacks there, I will give them a phone, a camera, and say, do my job for me. Highfield Hall is a treasure in town, partly because of its elaborate and decorative design, but maybe more so because it was nearly demolished in the 1990s. It's a story well known to many people in town. Maybe some people here were donors or volunteers to make it happen. Thank you. It was saved by the newly enacted demolition delay in 1994. Here's some pictures of before and during. I'm not going to go into detail because there's an excellent article in the Woods Hole Historical Museum Spritzel journal by Susan Shepard, who was the, quote, led a long epic struggle to save Highfield. It also says, the article tells the story of the dramatic rescue of Highfield Hall from the wrecker's ball and its gradual transformation into a town living room. It has a bell. It's barely mentioned in the Spritzel article, and a lot of people don't know about it, but this is a picture of it before the renovations were undertaken. Bill Dyer told me a story of one night he and his father and another person, I think maybe Eric McLaughlin, took the bell from Highfield Hall, took it down, delivered it to the Historical Society. This is before the renovations were begun. He drove the truck. So the Historical Society have an accession card about the bell, and it was clearly completed well after the bell was returned. It says, Eric McLaughlin picked it up and returned it to Highfield Hall, September 2001. That's about when the renovations were really beginning. So it was probably at the society for 5 or 6 years from when they took it down until it got moved back again. The other interesting thing on the accession card, it says, the saying on the bell needs to be recorded. So obviously it's gone. The saying is what is typically called inscription on the bell. This is after the renovations are done. It was put back to the same place it was before, and they added a little thing inside to, you can actually ring the bell inside the building, and there's a little plaque there. So now we know that the inscription reads, Minelli Battle Foundry, West Troy, New York, Highfield Hall, 1879, in memory of Maria Luisa Beebe, 1837 to 1883. And the little plaque there, which I don't think you can read very well, says, The Highfield bell was commissioned by the Beebe siblings to honor their sister Mary Louisa, I think it's probably Maria, who died in 1883. Discovered during the renovation, the clapper was repaired and the bell rehung in its original location. Now, I don't think the bell or the clapper were discovered during the renovations, but they certainly were repaired and rehung. And finally, a little ancestry. Beebe Acres and Highfield Hall are here because of the Beebe family. James Madison Beebe and his wife, Esther Elizabeth, had 7 children. After his death, the siblings are credited with building both Highfield Hall and Tanglewood, which was demolished in 1977. And 2 other items of note. One of the siblings, Edward Pearson Beebe, was the founder of St. Barnabas Episcopal Church. And one of his brothers, James Arthur Beebe, donated the Blake Bell at the Episcopal Church, which is still there and used. Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Falmouth. I hope you'll let me say UU Church, which we usually say. The bell at the UU Church is a simple farm bell hung in an unassuming tower on a storage shed. But the story behind it tells a lot about the fellowship's mission and about one man's life well lived. First, the bell. Farm bells in the early 1900s were a commodity. People used them on farms. They were used primarily to call people in for mealtime. And they were routinely available from Montgomery Ward, Henry Field Seed Company, lots of places. And then the man, Cyrus Cano, he was the one who donated the bell. He was born on a farm in Nebraska in 1922. His parents were Japanese immigrants. Years later, 1951, when he wanted to marry Dorothy Weintz, they had to move from Nebraska to Colorado because Nebraska didn't allow interracial marriages. She was Caucasian and he was Japanese parents. But he was an all-American guy, engineering graduate of MIT, had a successful career, and he and his wife became involved in environmental and social justice efforts like Bikes Not Bombs, Beyond War, Habitat for Humanity, Carriage House Shelter for Women, AIDS Support Group. I borrowed this from the UU Church website. When they came to settle on the Cape, no surprise, they joined the UU Church, which supported similar causes. Turns out that Cyrus had inherited the bell from his childhood farm, and he still had it all these years later, and he donated it to the UU Church. The timing was significant for 2 reasons. First, 2004, when he donated it, was the 50th year since Brown versus Topeka Board of Education, Supreme Court decision, was rejected separate but equal in schools. So this is the beginning of school desegregation. And the second reason for doing it in 2004 is that was when gay marriage was first allowed in Massachusetts. Bob Murphy, who was the pastor at the time, was active in the UU mission of promoting diversity, gladly accepted the bell, and along with other UU fellowships, rang it on noon on the 17th of May, 2004. It was actually, before they installed the bell outside, it had a little service inside the building. And the 2 circles I put here, because this picture is really cloudy, those are the 2 men who got the first people in Falmouth to get a license, same-sex marriage license. So they were at the service and ringing the bell. It's Michael Diaz on the left and Stephen Goldman on the right. The bell is being held on the left there by Tom Kirkman, the school committee chairman at the time. And on the right, you can see his hand is Bob Murphy, hidden behind the flag. So not a great picture in the Enterprise, but a great event. I like the lady in the front row with her covering her ears, so they obviously really rang the bell. Later, the bell was installed where we see it now, and it was rung in support of Ukraine, certainly in March 2022, and probably on other occasions. Teaticket School has an interesting history. There have been several buildings named Teaticket School, and there was a bell. I put together a little timeline. I've read a lot about it various places, and this is kind of a timeline of what happened based on Raleigh Costa's book, Recollections of Teaticket. And David Vieira is an expert on that. He helped me a bit too. So this is the center of Teaticket. And there's the hose house on the left there, and sort of hidden in the trees is a store, which is also the post office. And at the right is the schoolhouse, and that's also the other picture is the schoolhouse. And this, it turns out, was actually the second Teaticket schoolhouse. It was built in 1874. The building that was on the grounds before that was moved across the road, which they did a lot in those days, and became somebody's home. Be nice, I tried to track that down, but it's now land, which is the Admiralty Motel, and its building is long gone. So this is the second building, 1874, certainly had a bell. I tried to get some information about the bell from the Enterprise or from the annual reports, the town annual reports, but 1874 annual report is missing, digitally at least. And the bell could have come from the building that moved across the road, so it could be an older bell. But I did find mentions of bell rope at Teaticket School, bell rope at Teaticket School in annual reports, of town annual reports in a lot of detail. They were kind of a standard maintenance item. And it was mentioned to Teaticket once specifically in 1879 and 1881 reports. So there was a bell, we just can't identify it. And then, not unusual event in those times, on a cold January night in 1912, a chimney fire broke out in this building. And the Enterprise story says, the Teaticket schoolhouse caught fire last Monday night, presumably from a defective chimney. The building was completely destroyed, together with the contents. Nothing was saved. Now, bell bronze melts at about 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. Most house fires are not that hot. So there's a bell there somewhere, but it got lost. The same story tells about the extraordinary efforts of the school committee to get the school operating again. And within a week, they were moved into the hose house, just down the road. This is a little map. You can see down at the bottom of the very left-hand thing. It's upside down, sorry. Hose house, that's the firehouse. So they set up school in there. They got desks shipped from Boston. They got a stove from West Falmouth, a coal stove from West Falmouth. And so that you could sort of call the third schoolhouse. It was a temporary one. Then back on that other lot, in 1913, they built a new schoolhouse. I call this the hip roof schoolhouse. It is without a bell. We're now in the 20th century, and school bells are sort of passé. People have electric clocks and gongs. This is progress. But then, as population grew, this building got overcrowded, and there were too many kids. And I found an article in the 1917 town meeting that aimed to acquire land to build a portable school in addition to this one. Now, I've seen that building referred to elsewhere for some reason as the chicken school. I guess it was not a very nice building, certainly no bell. And I found this picture. Now, this is confusing here. That's actually what we now call the administration building. But on the left there, I think maybe the chicken school. It was not near the other school. It was up at the intersection of Sandwich Road where the administration building is. Let me see. So just a few months after this, the Teaticket school we're looking at there was completed and it was used. And so then the hip roof schoolhouse and the chicken shed were no longer needed. There's an article in 1928. Enterprise said the portable one-room schoolhouse at Teaticket was sold at auction. So again, they take a building and move it. You know. And maybe to compensate for its demeaning name, it has the distinction of being one of the last one-room, the last one-room schoolhouse in Falmouth, the chicken school. At this point, the hip roof school was no longer needed as well. It was turned over to the local VFW. Over the years, modifications were made, and that's it. Believe it or not, that's it. This picture is obviously late 90s, I think, not that long ago. So that building still exists. It was taken back to its shape. I took this picture a couple months ago, believe it or not. It's hard to believe. It's now owned by Falmouth Housing Corp and houses medical offices. David Vieira confirmed for me that the historic building was restored as part of the Teaticket Schoolhouse Green project when they added the new buildings there. In his words, the renovations and additions that ended up becoming the VFW were stripped away. In my words, good riddance. So this is a more current picture of the administration building. It was used as a Teaticket school from 1928 when it was finished until 1963 when they built the current Teaticket school. And this was quite a change from the chicken school. This is a classy building. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. Has a nice cupola, but never had a bell. On the front, you can't see in this picture very well, there's a clock. It's the only school in Falmouth to have an external clock. And then, starting in 1963, this is the Teaticket School on Mara Vista Extension. It certainly has no bell. And only the architect's mother could love this building. So since we're in Teaticket, I'll tell you a little story about the administration building, so-called. I found some treasures, Tyler's treasures. When I was writing the chapter in my book about the East Falmouth School, not Teaticket, but East Falmouth, I had trouble getting a decent picture of one of the buildings. Similar to Teaticket, there were many different buildings in East Falmouth. This is one that was built in '22 and demolished in 1958. And through the teacher underground, I managed to locate a young man called Tyler DeMello, who was a caretaker in the school system, but had an interest in Falmouth history. And he said, oh, I got a picture of that building. So here it is. This is the East Falmouth School with some teachers out front there. And the picture alone is kind of a treasure. It's like 11 by 15, and it comes with a little custom sleeve. And on the back, it says, Hugo Poisson for Falmouth Public Schools. Anybody remember Hugo Poisson here? He was a man about town and had a studio here. So Tyler told me when I gave it back to him, he had more stuff. So I met him late one night at the Health Administration building. Not really, but he did take me into a conference room. He went out of the basement and came back with this banker's box of stuff. They were pictures and documents that I think would be useful to a Falmouth public school historian, if such a person existed. Things like There's a picture of a band out in front of the Lawrence High School, which is beside where the library is now. And here's a picture of Woods Hole School with some teachers. None of these are dated, unfortunately, although you can sort of bracket the dates. And an architect's rendering of maybe Morse Pond. I couldn't quite figure it out. And a couple of nice pictures of Hall School. A lot of people don't remember it was Mullen School and Hall School. And the Hall School is long gone. Well, not that long, but yeah,
it's on
right.
a corner.
Where there's a street going through there now, yeah. And then this one I really like. This is a picture of a football team. I like the leather helmets, first of all. But I found another picture of a football team, 1908. This is 1925. 1908 with no helmets. This is progress. So this is 1925, and handwritten on there, which you can barely read, I'm sure. LHS Falmouth, Mass, Cape Cod Champions, 1925. LHS is Lawrence High School. So later on, I searched around and I found an article in the Falmouth Enterprise. This event was a big deal. And they had a reception at the Elm Arch Inn, which is now, remember, this high school is near the library, so the Elm Arch Inn is sort of across the road. Complete with speeches, cheers, singing of old-time songs, including the Lawrence High School song. I don't know that. And there were several things in Tyler's banker's box that I didn't take pictures of. I just grabbed a few. There was a couple of obviously recording maintenance issues, a big leak happening some school somewhere, but no date. A couple of class pictures with people sitting all together and the person in front holding the date and the school that it was. I've seen lots of those. And then this one, which I think not really important, but non-school item, certainly very different. I think, and Mary Pat has helped me with this, I think this is the entrance to the old burying ground on Elm Road. Why it got into the school box and stuff, I don't know. So there's a lesson. You never know where historic documents will come from, but you do know there's always new old stuff to be found. So that's kind of my thing, but I'm gonna, if you give me a couple of minutes here, I'd like to do a pitch about my favorite building in town, the Lawrence Academy. For those who don't know, it was built in 1834 by some public-spirited gentlemen who wanted to bring higher education to Falmouth. That is beyond grammar school, what we would now call high school. And they ran it as a business with students paying to attend. And yes, it had a bell from day one. Initially, it was called Falmouth Academy, and then one Shubale Lawrence left funds in his estate to support and upgrade the school, and then it was called Lawrence Academy. Eventually, the town bought it and ran it as a high school for a while, Lawrence High School. But only for a few years, because that got overcrowded. Then they built the one which is now demolished beside the library here. So after that, the Academy building served many purposes. Now it's the Chamber of Commerce building. My book has more details about the history of that building. It's recognized on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's in need of restoration. Here's a couple of quick pictures of what's going on. The upper left one is the belfry, the cupola up on top. And obviously lots of physical rotting, but there's more to it than that. Michael Kasparian, president of Chamber of Commerce, has put together a proposal to get support to restore this building. The proposal received unanimous approval from the Select Board and from the Historical Commission, and now needs funding by the town. It should be on the warrant in April 2025, not this next meeting, but the one after that. I wrote some historical background in the proposal on the basis of what I've been learning about the building. But it's much broader than just my entrance, which is the bell and the cupola. The proposed work that they talk about includes things like repairing these physical things, obviously, rotted wood, upgrade sustainability of the building, get a decent roof, fix some fascia problems and put gutters on it, upgrade the HVAC, air conditioning, heating, with modern mini-split systems. This building is widely admired, an attractive gem of 19th century history. The Chamber has taken on the role and made it into a tourist information center. Visitors and locals alike see the building with its genuine history and charm as an attractive centerpiece to the town. I urge everyone, town meeting member or not, to support this work. There you are. That's my story.